Netanyahu, and Benny Gantz, the leader of an opposition political alliance. The main piece of the deal includes a war management cabinet, which will include the two leaders and Israeli Defense Minister Gantz. Hamas is asking for international help to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and put pressure on Israel to lift its siege and allow entry of essential goods. In a statement, the group directly appealed to Arab and Islamic nations, asking that they fulfill their religious, national, ethical, and humanitarian responsibilities towards the people of Gaza. And Representative Steve Scalise of Louisiana narrowly scraped together enough Republican support today to become his party's choice to lead the House. But deep divisions in the GOP ranks threaten to complicate his election as Speaker. Mere minutes after a slim majority of Republicans voted in a closed-door party meeting to select Scalise as the party's candidate, his fate was thrown into doubt. Several GOP lawmakers announced they would not back him on the House floor without concessions, complaining of a rush process to choose a new speaker. And according to a Los Angeles Times article, a growing number of Black Americans are so fed up with racism that they are leaving the United States. Exhausted by anti-Black discrimination and violence, they are building communities in countries such as Costa Rica, Portugal, Ghana, Colombia, and Mexico. There are no official stats on how many have left the U.S., but academics say it may be one of the most significant immigrations of African Americans since the first half of the century, or first half of last century, when many Black artists decamped to Europe. And the Supreme Court today heard arguments on a constitutional puzzle, some are calling it, from South Carolina. And the question before the court today was how to disentangle the roles of race and partisanship in drawing voting maps when Black voters overwhelmingly favor Democrats. The difference matters because the Supreme Court has said that only racial gerrymandering may be challenged in federal court as constitutionally suspect. The case sees the justices grappling with the impact of their own ruling from 2019 that effectively gave the green light to so-called partisan gerrymandering when it said federal courts have no role in assessing such claims. A group of House Republicans from New York are introducing a resolution to expel Representative George Santos. This is the Republican from New York. Booting Santos would require 2/3 votes of the entire House, a benchmark that seems to be difficult for the Republicans to meet. Now, this move comes a day after federal prosecutors issued Santos a 23-count superseding indictment alleging that he committed identity theft, fraud, and other offenses. Santos, who was first indicted in May, has said he plans on fighting all of the charges. And bravo to California State Senator Stephen Bradford. As a result of his efforts, California has enacted the first of its kind Ebony Alert. This is an alert system that will prioritize the search for Black youth gone missing. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed Senate Bill 673 into law on Sunday, making California the first state to create an alert notification system similar to an Amber Alert to address the crises of missing Black children and young women. Now, about 141,000 Black children under the age of 18 went missing in 2022 alone, and Black women over 21 accounted for nearly 16,500 missing persons cases this year. Sadly, more than 30,000 Black people in the U.S. remain missing at the end of 2022. This is Areva Martin in Real Time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. This is your one-stop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. In this hour, I am joined by two superstar contributors, Jamarr Brown, who is the former executive director of the Texas Democratic Party, and he is currently a Democratic strategist. And Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey is here. He is a KBLA National Political Affairs analyst, and he is host of A More Perfect Union right here on KBLA weekdays at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And in hour two, you know what we do. We go deep and we dig behind the headlines on some of the biggest stories of the day. These are stories that make headlines and stories that have big impact. Today, we are talking about your health. Yes. And the unfortunate reality that millions of people in this country are likely to die young. And it's not because of your lifestyle or choices that you make about exercise or diet or, how much clean air you're breathing. None of this has to do with those normal social determinants of health. But according to a new report out, your life expectancy is tied to the state that you live in and the color of that state. Yes, the red-blue divide isn't just about money. It also is increasingly a matter of life or death. And in hour two, we have some of the nation's leading experts who are going to join us and help us understand how politics, whether you live in a red state or a blue state, how that can impact your mortality rate and really determine at what age you are likely to die. Make sure you stick around for hour two because it's going to be an exciting conversation. But before I bring on my guest, here is what I'm thinking in real time. Now, you've heard the term poetic justice. This story makes me think pillow justice. Yes, I'm talking about MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell. The attorneys representing him in this massive defamation case are not getting paid. And they've asked the court to let them off the hook so that they can no longer be responsible for representing CEO Mike Lindell. You all remember Mr. Pillow. He is an avid supporter of Donald Trump and the big lie about the 2020 presidential election. Attorneys for Lindell claims that he owes them millions of dollars that he cannot pay, and that although he was paying them initially, payments have pretty much ceased coming from Mr. Lindell, and his failure to pay is putting his lawyers in a difficult situation, causing financial hardship for their law firm. So they're asking the court to allow them to drop his case. Now, this is a $1.3 billion with a B, defamation lawsuit that was filed against Lindell by voting machine companies Smartmatic and Dominion. You remember Dominion? They got that massive settlement from Fox News for its defamatory remarks. These voting machine companies are suing Lindell for backing Trump's lie about the voting machine companies fraudulently changing votes from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. Now, supporting Donald Trump and the big lie is causing Lindell and his otherwise successful company to almost file bankruptcy. They are on the brink of bankruptcy because, in addition to this massive defamation action that Lindell is facing, retailers like Walmart have discontinued selling MyPillow pillows. Yes, after Lindell backed former President Donald Trump's claims about the 2020 election, he saw big retail stores drop his products. Now, Lindell is adamant that he is not going to file for bankruptcy. He's told the court that he agrees with his lawyers that he hasn't been paying them, and he completely understands why they want to drop his case. Now, my prediction is, like the many other flunkies who have had to face serious consequences because of their blind loyalty to the biggest fraudster in the country, i.e. Donald Trump, Mike Lindell is probably going to have to file bankruptcy because he won't be able to defend himself against this $1.3 billion defamation lawsuit. And one way to try to avoid the big judgment is to file bankruptcy. I don't know how many of these flunkies have to see themselves stripped of everything, their reputations, their law licenses, and in this case, a very, very successful business before they realize that loyalty to Donald Trump is pretty much like a life sentence. My grandmother used to say, a hard head makes a soft behind. Maybe, just maybe, Mr. Pillow Guy will remember that before he goes chasing behind Donald Trump and the next big lie. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities and sports figures, elected leaders and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader.
We are back, and in this hour, Jamarr Brown and Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey are joining me to help us break down today's trending and breaking news. So let's start with one of the biggest pieces of news today, Dr. Nee, and that is Steve Scalise, the congressman from Louisiana, got enough votes in this secret meeting of Republicans to be advanced over Jim Jordan as the next Speaker of the House, the Republican Speaker of the House, but a vote that was supposed to happen today at 3 o'clock was postponed because the Republicans didn't have enough votes to get Steve Scalise over the finish line. So what are you expecting to happen over the next day or two as he tries to whip up enough votes to become the next speaker? There's all this pressure, obviously, given the terrorist attack on Israel, for the House to be functioning so that they can, pass some legislation, pass a resolution to provide more support for our key ally, Israel.
Well, doesn't this feel like deja vu, Areva? I mean, remember, it took now former Speaker Kevin McCarthy 15 rounds in order to get the votes he needed in order to get over the finish line to become Speaker of the House. And so, look, if Scalise can manage to get the votes in less than 15 rounds, count that as a win, given the dysfunction that exists in the House Republican caucus. And it's a caucus that really should be ashamed of themselves, because right now, as we almost feel like we're on the cusp of World War III in the Middle East, and where we really need to show up for our allies, we really need to be a world leader that speaks with clarity, that speaks in one voice. You have, this disruption that's happening in the House Republican caucus that is preventing us from being able to do exactly that. And so, they should do our country a favor, and for a change, put the country first. Put the country first. But sadly, I don't expect that to happen. But on the other hand, thank goodness it was Representative Scalise, that got enough votes to put him over the finish line, as opposed to Representative Jim Jordan. And so, that's very little comfort for most folks, because, Areva, remember all the concessions that Speaker McCarthy needed to garner in order to get the votes to become Speaker. Well, you better believe Representative Scalise right now is working the phones to secure enough House votes. And the only way he's going to do it is by making some of the same crazy concessions that Speaker McCarthy made.
No, really excellent point. And Jamarr, let's talk about Donald Trump, because Donald Trump jumped out early on supporting Jim Jordan. And yet again, proving that Donald Trump does not have long coattails, if any. How many times have we seen him support the losing candidate? This is just another example of that. And then let's consider this wrinkle. You have these House Republicans from New York introducing a resolution to expel George Santos at a time when Steve Scalise is going to need every possible Republican vote. So you have this very interesting dynamic. We know Jim Jordan and Matt Gaetz, who ousted Jim Jordan, both saying they're going to vote for Scalise, but some of those 8 that stood in solidarity with Matt Gaetz said they will not vote for Steve Scalise. So this looks like one big mess yet again. What are you thinking about, how this is going to get resolved, and if Steve Scalise is going to be able to cross the finish line?
Well, I think that what we're going to have to see is what concessions is Steve Scalise willing to make. We've seen that the Republican Party has made concessions, not just Kevin McCarthy, but the entire Republican Party has made concessions when it looks at Donald Trump. And what we're learning is that Donald Trump's coattails don't go as long as they used to. And the people that are voting for him, and his power doesn't go beyond him, right? And so we're seeing that now in this House election. And so over the next couple of days, I imagine that they canceled the rest of the vote because Steve Scalise does not have the votes. And the Republican Party does not want the embarrassment of going through 15 more votes. And so what does Steve Scalise need to do to get those 4 or 5 votes, which is the small margin now, right, in the House, really to be able to do that when the Democrats are very united behind Hakeem Jeffries? And so what happens, and does the small group of 8, do they put someone else up? Do they vote present? Do they lower the threshold? Right, like all of those things we have to see. And I imagine that they don't want to lose the speakership, but I do imagine that they feel as a minority within their caucus, and they're going to try to get every concession possible to feel that they've gained some power, which is how it backfired on Kevin McCarthy in the first place. So we'll see what Steve Scalise is able to do.
Well, it's so funny, Dr. Nee. It was just yesterday that Kevin McCarthy was floating his name, saying, hey, pick me. I'm available. I know you just fired me, but if you want to hire me back, I'm available and I can, resume my duties as speaker. He had that big press conference to talk to the media about Israel. So I think Kevin McCarthy was secretly hoping and wishing that he would be reinstalled as speaker. Obviously, that is not going to happen. But talk about this wrinkle with George Santos, because Jamarr says, look, we got a 4 or 5 vote margin here. And if something happens, i.e. George Santos is expelled, that could, really spell trouble for Steve Scalise or any Republican trying to become speaker in this moment.
I mean, I think not just among Republicans, but even among Democrats, because remember, Senator Menendez, is facing, charges as well. And so, what we're talking about right now are some razor thin margins among folks in the majority of both houses. Right. And so, we can't afford to lose, 1 or 2 senators or 1 or 2 members of Congress at any given point, given, the people's business. I mean, right now we have less than 40 days in order to pass a continuing resolution to keep government open. We also know that the Farm Bill is going to expire at the end of this year, and that has really far-reaching repercussions in terms of the folks that rely on SNAP benefits, for example, but also our farmers, that are in charge of feeding not just America, but they're empowered to sort of feed the world, right? Farmers, they need the resources in order to be able to make good, on that work. And we also know that there are a host of important other items that are government funds, that will expire at the end of this year. And so, we can't afford to lose, anyone who plays a key role in being able to move legislation from one house to the next, right? And so, I think this kerfuffle that continues in the Republican caucus, it only seems to get worse. I mean, the charges, the indictments of George Santos, my goodness, how bad is it going to get? And at a time where the world is really in need of American leadership, look at what's happening in the Middle East each and every day, right? We can't afford to be divided. And I fear that the Republicans will not get their act together in due time. And that may translate to the United States being missing in action on the world stage.
Yeah, George Santos, Jamarr, typically public corruption is quid pro quo. You give me some money, I'll pass a bill, or I'll use my influence to do something that helps you. George has taken public corruption to a whole new level. Like, steal your donors' credit card identities, take money off your donors' credit cards and put it in your own bank. Oh, and by the way, stop on Fifth Avenue and buy yourself a designer, item. This guy, I guess we call him rich, and that's dripping in sarcasm, obviously. But what do you make of these House Republicans? They know how razor thin the Republicans' majority is. They know we have the spending bill that's going to come up in 40 days. They know about the Middle East crisis, the crisis that Israel is in. So why did they put forth this resolution to expel George Santos? And they know what a scumbag he is. They've known that all along. And I know they've tried before, but seems like now is, to the extent you'd say it's not the time, seems like it's not the time for them.
Yeah, it seems like it's not the time for them, but it also seems like they are at the place where they're trying to salvage their party at the same time. And so I think that what you're seeing here, to what we were just discussing about, here's the spending bill, here's the farm bill. There's several other bills, right, that are waiting. There are judicial nominations in the Senate that's still waiting, right? Like, we can go down the gamut of what we're still waiting on. But at the end of the day, I think as the Republicans are looking to 2024 elections up and down the ballot, they know they have a drag, not only with Donald Trump, but with George Santos, with other Republicans across the country. And so at the end of the day, they know that this razor-thin majority, sometimes they have to eat their own in order to take a risk in a special election, in order to maintain that slim majority. And I think that whatever happens in the 2024 election, we're looking at slim majorities both in the House and the Senate on either side. And to the point that my friend was making around the spending bill, right, the farm bill, our government is run on the margins right now, and our people are starting to feel it. And I think that both parties, Democrats and Republicans, are starting to look at their bases and say, how do we try to navigate and move this thing along so that we have something to go into the next election claiming that we've accomplished for our base? with a small margin.
Yeah, I think you're right. Those New York Republicans, they have been outspoken about expelling George Santos when, it was first exposed that he was a liar and a crook. There hasn't been a big appetite, though, amongst other Republicans in the House to do so because of these thin margins that we're talking about. And I suspect Steve Scalise is not going to be in favor of getting rid of George Santos, even though he could be a drag on the party and even though he could really impact the New York election in 2024. We know we're looking at some seats that we could possibly pick up for the Democratic Party in New York in particular. So we'll see what happens to George Santos. He'll continue to claim his innocence, which he has a right to do. Everybody's presumed innocence until proven guilty. But boy, this guy's the allegations against him are really, really troubling on so many different levels. When we come forward, we got to talk about the Supreme Court likely decision in South Carolina, because it's not looking good for Black voters in that state. Also, the crisis in Israel seems to be getting worse, not better. And why are Black folks moving to, of all places, Colombia and Mexico? Got to get your take on that and so much more of today's breaking news right here on KBLA Talk 1580 when we come forward.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way Black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities and sports figures, elected leaders and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot.
We are back and we are tracking today's trending and breaking news. And two of my expert contributors are here. Jamarr Brown, former executive director of the Texas Democratic Party and a Democratic strategist, and Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey from KBLA is here. He's a national political affairs analyst and host of A More Perfect Union right here on KBLA every day at 1 p.m. Okay. We have all been watching and the horror of the attacks by the terrorist group Hamas against the Israelites or Israeli nation. And we've seen the president voice his unequivocal support for Israel. We know that the House, whenever it gets, itself together, plans to pass resolutions to show its support and to provide additional military aid. We know that at least 1,200 Israelis and over 1,000 Palestinians have already died as a result of this horrific attack that happened over the weekend. I've been looking at African-American papers, though, and social media to see where the Black community is with respect to the terrorist attack. And overwhelmingly, the African-American community seems to be standing in solidarity and supportive of Israel's right to defend itself. We know there's a deep-rooted connection between Black folks and Israel that's existed for decades. Both communities have found common ground in their struggles against oppression and discrimination. But not everybody in the Black community is standing with Israel. There are some Black Lives Matter chapters across the country that have voiced their support for the Palestinians. The Chicago, where you are, Dr. Nee, Black Lives Matter chapter sparked outrage yesterday after it posted a graphic of a paraglider with the Palestinian flag that read, "I stand with Palestine." Now, the group has since deleted the post, but I'm just reading some of the comments online from other Black Lives Matters groups. One from the BLM grassroots says, as a radical Black organization grounded in abolitionist ideals, we see clear parallels between Black and Palestinian people. There has been tremendous backlash by politicians and other community leaders, and they've gotten the ire. This Black Lives Matter have really been put on blast by many of these folks. What do you make of this, Jamarr?
Well, I think, in this current situation that we have right now, of all the things that have happened, one, there's some opportunity with the U.S. to continue to be a world leader on this particular issue, especially in support of Israel, as you said, right? The president has come out in very strong support of that. But what I think that we're seeing from groups such as the Black Lives Matter, different groups across the country, in support of Palestine is, there's some different very racial dynamics and dynamics of racism and those sort of things that are coming out, also as well. I'd be curious to know, as those groups have put out those statements, who have put out those graphics and other things that you've outlined, why they took it back. I'd particularly be curious about that. I don't know if my friend has any thoughts about that.
Well, let me be clear. The only retraction that I've seen is from that post by the Chicago chapter of Black Lives Matter. And although they took that post down, they still continue to voice very strongly their support for Palestine. So, Dr. Nee, jump in here. I don't think the Black Lives Matter groups are backing down at all.
But, let me first say that when I saw the post that you're referencing, and I think TMZ also reported on it earlier, I was really disappointed because, look, people have had a number of different views on the tensions and on the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. That's not what this moment is all about. There's been an attack on folks. Folks have been adhering to practices that are not consistent with international law. They're not consistent with, normal, quote unquote, forms of warfare. And there have been people who have been killed. There are children that have been killed. There are women that have been raped, right? And so the post that I saw was incredibly insensitive. It was incredibly tone deaf. And I actually don't think it represented the sentiment of a lot of people that also deeply believe in the mission of Black Lives Matter. There was a comment that I took a screenshot of this morning that really summed up what I was feeling as I was reading through the post and what I think a lot of people were feeling. It's from Ursuline TV. That was the person who said it. And they said, quotes, "My concern with this messaging and timing is that Hamas has co-opted the terrible Palestinian occupation situation. And now millions of Palestinians are having to suffer in collateral damage. Hamas is a terrorist group funded by Iran, and they do not want the same things as you and I. They do not believe in women's freedom. They do not believe in safety and freedom for Black people. They do not believe in religious freedom. They do not believe in economic freedom. They are co-opting the very dire Palestinian situation as a means to annihilate Israel while not actually wanting to fix the issues happening in Palestine." That was just a piece of what was posted today. And there were over 300 people at the time that had liked that particular comment. So I think there were more people that believe in Black Lives Matter that believe that that post didn't represent them. And it's important that we note that as well.
Well, it's interesting, Jamarr, because the president took aim at Democrats who he viewed as supporting Palestinians, and the White House press secretary also said, "We believe they're wrong, we believe they're repugnant, and we believe they're disgraceful." And this is when the White House press secretary was asked about comments from squad members, Representatives Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, among others. What kind of damage do you think this might be doing to the brand of Black Lives Matter? Because as Dr. Nee said, there are lots of folks who probably support what they think to be the mission of Black Lives Matter, but would not want to be affiliated with the organization if the organization takes this kind of position in this crisis at this moment. So do you think Black Lives Matter is doing tremendous damage to their brand? We're not hearing you, Jamarr.
Sorry, I think that it's putting people in an interesting position, right? Where Black people have experienced the very things that we've seen in this conflict, right? Where we talk about women and babies being killed, where we talk about mass economic oppression, right? And some of those things. And Black Lives Matter, and this country is known to be fighting against those things in this very country, but in support in terms of Palestine and some of those statements. And so I think that they will be in a position where there will be people who will start to decide if they support Black Lives Matter. But I think particularly what would be important to see is, would people start pulling their contributions, right, and donations and resources that Black Lives Matter has used to fight those very systems in this country and in communities in this particular country, also as well. And I think that's the risk that they take in moving forward with those type of posts and those kind of statements. What do people in this country do in terms of how they show up and how they support Black Lives Matter? And so I think that's the thing that you've got to start looking at going forward.
Well, we don't need to look very far. We know if you take an anti-Israeli position in this country, you can just forget it.
Pretty much get cut off.
I mean, you're pretty much canceled amongst particular folks, particularly those folks that move a lot of money in this country. I'm surprised, Dr. Nee, because that comment you read is I think nuanced in a way that I would have expected Black Lives Matter's leaders to have articulated a much more nuanced position because Hamas is not the Palestinian people. Hamas is not acting on behalf of the Palestinians. And again, I think of Black Lives Matter as being led by, super educated and well-informed individuals. So I am a little surprised that they have not nuanced their position more and made it very clear that you can support in a humanitarian way the Palestinians, people who are being raped and murdered and slaughtered and injured, and call out the terrorists. You can call out the Hamas terrorists, and I would think that anyone would call out terrorists, whether they're domestic terrorists or foreign terrorists. I mean, the violence that we have seen, from Hamas is just completely unacceptable. I can't imagine even someone that considers themselves a radical or, leading a radical organization being in support of that kind of violence against innocent people.
Areva, can I
sure,
just
jump
say
in?
Can I just say that, a few days ago, I had Gamal Palmer as a guest on my show, and Gamal Palmer is a Black Jew and is an international advocate for Jews of color. And, we had him on Monday to really give us a 101 in terms of, how Jews, particularly Jews of color, are processing, this terrorist attack, and also to give us a 101 on sort of how we got here, right? As high level as possible. And I purposely wanted to, he's been to Israel and he's been to Palestinian territory. This is somebody, who had exposure to different perspectives and how complicated this conflict is. And there are some people out there that want to start the clock, where it's convenient for their argument, where it's convenient for their narrative. And, there's a really complicated history here. And just as Hamas is not representative of the Palestinian people, some of the extremely conservative Israelis are not representative of all Israelis. No more are the insurrectionists in this country representative of you and me and our fellow Americans. And so I think it's important that we keep that perspective as we continue to witness.
Yes, and that's why I use the word nuance. These are complex issues, geopolitical issues that are very, very nuanced, and you can't use a broad brush in talking about these issues or in quote unquote taking a side without, as you said, having the complete history and not the cherry picked history that fits your narrative. And I think this calls upon all of us, to be more critical in our thinking, to be more discerning in what we say, what we post online, because there are so many nuances. And if you don't know what to say, or this issue, you don't want to take the time to delve into it, the complexities of it, might be a time to say nothing. That's okay. You don't have to have something to say about everything that happens. Someone very wise taught me that, and it's great advice to follow. When we come forward, we got to talk about these Black folks moving to Mexico when so many Mexicans are trying to move to the U.S. What's prompting this, and what might this mean for U.S.-Mexican relationships and this Supreme Court decision or future decision grappling with the maps in South Carolina? When we come forward, KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way Black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like the style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Zoe Williams, a.k.a. the voice of reason, encouraging you to join me weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. for the world's most intriguing relationship radio roundtable. Every night, I facilitate and encourage our loyal listeners to participate in the most engaging relationship discussions you'll hear anywhere. So make it a point to rendezvous with me, Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Trust me, your relationships will never be the same. The VOR is on fire tonight.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Good stuff, the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports.
All right, we are back and we are still talking about today's breaking news. But in hour two, we're going to be talking about your health and how which state you live in, whether that state is a red state or a blue state, can impact how long you may live. Yes, it's not how you eat or how much you exercise, but it's the politics of your state, according to this new report, that will determine your mortality. All right, it's going to be an interesting conversation, so make sure you stick around. But Dr. Nee, Black folks, you told me during the break, have always looked to other countries when they became fed up with the racism and the discrimination in the U.S. So now, according to the LA Times, there's a new kind of round of Black folks who are looking to places like Ghana, I get, but on this list is Colombia and Mexico. When I think about all the Mexican immigrants trying to come into the U.S., fleeing Mexico because of the poor conditions in which they live and some of the, the cartel wars and the danger. I'm thinking, why Mexico?
Well, I think there are some people that say, why the United States when you have these incidents of shootings in different communities and you have these insurrectionists that have different cells across the country. And so there are some foreigners that think that all of the United States isn't safe, just as some people may think of all of Colombia or Mexico is not all that safe, when there are pockets that are still relatively safe. Look, as I mentioned earlier, in my father's homeland of Ghana, there's a long history of Black folks like James Baldwin and W.E.B. Du Bois and Pauli Murray. I mean, the list goes on and on. Maya Angelou, folks that made Ghana their home, at least for a period of time. And I think part of what we're hearing is that there's a growing interest among Black folks to get out of the United States and just sort of reset. It feels like surround sound discrimination, surround sound anti-Blackness. A lot of people are asking themselves, is this the environment they want to be in at this present day? Is this the environment they want to raise their kids in, right? And a lot of folks are saying, I at least need a break. And I totally get that. I mean, we report on a lot of what is happening, here and across the country. And there got to be days where we need a reset, where we need to take a breather from things. And so I can totally understand, the urge to move somewhere that's more affordable, right? Where, you may experience a class difference that may actually improve your quality of life. I think that's what people want here. And if they can't get it here, they're going to go somewhere in the world to get it.
Yeah, Dr. D, I just hope these people are not oblivious to the fact that colorism, we've been talking a lot about colorism and how it is pervasive in Latin American countries, as pervasive, if not more, than it is in the U.S. So you may have a different standard or quality of life because of your economic status, but your Blackness is going with you to Mexico, and dark-skinned Black folks in Mexico are likely to be treated as poorly in some ways as we may be treated in the U.S. So we'll keep an eye on that, because this article says they don't really have stats on how many people are actually leaving the U.S. But I just thought it was an interesting article. Before I let you go, the Supreme Court, Jamarr, is grappling with its own ruling. 2019, they basically said you can partisan gerrymander as long as it's not based on race. If it's just based on, your party, we're not going to look at it. That's not something the federal courts have any jurisdiction over. So now you have this South Carolina lawsuit by the NAACP saying that the maps drawn by the Republicans in South Carolina are based on race, not party affiliation, and Republicans pushing back saying, oh, no, we didn't consider race. We just, we wanted to get more Republicans in the district and get the Democrats out. How is the Supreme Court going to decide this? And is this likely to damage or to undermine voting power in South Carolina?
Well, my parents live in that district that's under, they're talking about mostly in the Charleston Low Country area. I definitely think that we will see voting power undermined by a decision by the Supreme Court, because what I understand about the case is, and what we've seen some of the justices already put out, is that they're really leaning on the partisanship. And so now that is giving way to either party, quite frankly, but particularly in this case, Republicans, to say, yeah, we can pick and choose our voters now. And so if we can pick and choose our voters that live in a certain district, that live in a certain community, then does the voters really have power if I'm not of the majority party of how that district is drawn? So I think that this is going to be interesting to see. And it seems that the Supreme Court justices that at least have commented or put some things out so far, it seems that they're leaning on the partisanship piece. And if they start ruling on that, that opens another door outside of the race piece that we're seeing down in Alabama.
Well, yeah, because the courts in 2019 effectively gave the green light to the so-called partisan gerrymandering. And that is a playbook for Republicans, Republican-led House, state legislatures to say, we're just picking our voters by their party affiliation. We're not thinking about race. We just want more Republican districts and fewer Democratic districts. This is so incredibly dangerous. Again, this is why who's in office, who is in control of the U.S. Senate. The Senate that confirms U.S. Supreme Court justices is so very important. So many, people think that the president is where all the power is. And of course, the president has a tremendous amount of power, but the Senate, when it comes to who gets to make life-changing decisions about reproductive health, about voting rights, all that power is with the Supreme Court. And it's not looking good. The 6-3 conservative court has me very worried about how they're going to rule in this case, and then how this case can be used by other conservative jurisdictions to basically continue to undermine the Black vote. Real quickly, Dr. Nee, you spent some time in California. We have a new Ebony alert. So now if a Black kid or Black woman goes missing, thanks to State Senator Steve Bradford and Governor Gavin Newsom, there will be an alert sent out for that person, that African-American person, first of its kind alert system. What do you think about it?
I think this is a big deal, and as goes California, as goes the nation. And so look forward to seeing more leadership on the state level across the country, following the lead of California State Senator Steve Bradford and Governor Newsom. It was a great day in California to see this law passed and signed into law.
Yes, the Crown Act, and now the Ebony Alert. California is leading the way on so many issues related to people of color. And again, kudos to State Senator Steve Bradford. We are out of time. Thank you so much, Jamarr Brown. And thank you, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey. Check him out every day right here on KBLA Talk 1580 at 1 p.m. PST. He is bringing you all of the news and politics on A More Perfect Union. And stick around for hour 2. We're going to be talking about your health and how the state that you live in can severely impact your mortality right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Don't touch that dial.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar,
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news?